Tyrone Bowman live. This is an exclusive. New evidence confirmed that Tory Lanez is innocent. If you remember, he's currently doing 10 years in state penitentiary because Megan Thee Stallion said that he shot her. Well, according to Mediocre Tutorials, this video that I have, his lawyers recently held a press conference to deal with the exculpatory evidence that has been found. If I sound like a lawyer, it's because I'm a law student on my way, halfway there. So let's get down to this and let's listen to it intently, and we'll talk about it at the end of the video.
Today, we're going to hear some really compelling new evidence that you've never heard before. Our legal team will explain all of that to you. We will have updates on Tory Lanez, Mr. Peterson, on how he's doing. It's really sad to see the situation that he's in, and we think it's time. Enough is enough. It's time to bring the brother home. So with that, I would like to bring up our lead consultant, Mr. Walter Roberts.
Good morning. We are here today to bring to your attention some information Unite the People believes is exculpatory in Mr. Daystar Peterson's case, professionally known as Tory Lanez. Recently, we've been made aware that a member of the media, Mr. Gianno Caldwell, was working on an op-ed for the New York Post regarding Mr. Peterson's innocence. During his work on that op-ed, he became aware of some information in Unite the People's possession regarding a statement that was given to Unite the People by someone with information relevant to that case. The New York Post recently reached out to the prior district attorney, George Gaston, Megan Pete and her representatives, and Kelsey Harris and her representatives. The only party that responded last week was Megan Pete's representatives with a request for more information. A few days later, Mr. Peterson's brutally attacked in his jail cell. Unite the People represents Daystar Peterson in his appellate process. We filed an appellate brief and a writ of habeas corpus on his behalf. The district attorney's office has already responded. The case is fully briefed. We're just waiting for the appellate court's decision. We were willing to wait for the appellate process to play out, but given that brutal, unprovoked attack, we felt it necessary to come here today to provide you with this information. It is our intention to make a request to the governor to either pardon or commute the sentence of Mr. Peterson, so that when he recovers from this attack, he's not returned to a jail cell, but that he's allowed to go home and recover. Not long ago, Unite the People was approached by a gentleman named Bradley James. Mr. James informed us he was working as the bodyguard and driver for Ms. Kelsey Harris during Mr. Peterson's trial. As such, he was in close proximity and he had privy to conversations she was having with her husband and others. Mr. Peterson, I'm sorry, Mr. James informed us he was not under a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement and was free to speak with Unite the People, and that he was doing it because his conscience would not let him not speak and leave a man in prison for something he did not do. Mr. James informed Unite the People that he was a witness to the conversation Ms. Harris had, where she stated she had the gun, she fired it 3 times, Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked her down, and the gun fired 2 more times. In essence, Mr. Peterson never shot anybody, never even touched that gun, never fired the gun. This statement aligns with the statement of the only non-party witness to the case, Mr. Sean Kelly, who at trial testified he saw 2 women fighting, 2 men break up the fight, 1 man grabbed the other one's arm. Gunshots came from the passenger side. The passenger side is where Ms. Harris was sitting. This further iterates that Mr. Peterson did not shoot Miss Pete, did not shoot at Miss Pete, or did not assault Miss Pete. It's just another irregularity in a list of irregularities in this case. For example, there were 3 potential suspects in the car that night, and yet the only DNA sample was taken of Mr. Peterson, even though unknown DNA was found on the gun. Why wasn't Miss Harris's DNA taken?
Now, in order to receive Kelsey's testimony, she was given immunity. That's probably why a DNA sample of hers was not taken. Asking for immunity would denote that you are guilty of something. So it sounds like she wanted to put the blame on Tory the entire time, and he was the perfect fall guy for it.
Or was it taken and the information simply never given to the defense? Why wasn't the driver of the car, Mr. Jaquan Smith's DNA taken? Or was it taken and again, simply not given to the defense? We don't know. It should have been taken. It is Unite the People's understanding, regular LAPD practice at a crime scene like that, anybody who's there, DNA is taken. Another irregularity. Why, at Ms. Harris's police interview, was a non-lawyer, non-family member, record company executive allowed to participate? Highly irregular situation. Normally, we see cases, strangers are not allowed in these things, but it was in this case. All of these things point to the highly irregular nature of his trial and his conviction. It is our contention that he was wrongly convicted. And while we at first were willing to let the process play out, it is our contention now that if he is not pardoned or released promptly, he may never come out. And that would be the ultimate injustice, is that he gets killed in prison for something he did not do. At this time, I'd like to bring up Mr. Gianno Caldwell, the media member who was working on that op-ed for the New York Post. Thank you.
I'd like to come in here and interject this. There are too many people who are languishing in prison right now because somebody decided, there's no nice way to say it, to lie, frame them, to save their behinds. That's why a lot of people are locked up. And the fact that she was granted total immunity by the prosecution for her testimony indicates that she's a liar. And she was lying to save her own hide. It's not right that this young man is locked up in prison for something that he did not do. Reputation ruined, career ruined. Let's get back to this story here.
Thank you, Walter. Good morning. Thank you for coming today. My name is Gianno Caldwell. That is spelled Gianno. Caldwell, Caldwell. I am the founder of the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety at caldwellinstitute.org. I am also a member of the press for almost a decade now. I've been looking into Daystar Peterson's case for almost 6 months now, professionally known as Tory Lanez. And after reviewing the evidence, the reporting, and the legal analysis, I've come to the conclusion that Tory Lanez was railroaded by the former district attorney, George Gascon.
Prosecutorial misconduct.
I believe if Jesus Christ was Tory Lanez's attorney, George Gascon would do whatever in his power to ensure that Tory Lanez lost that case. Tory Lanez's defense team have alleged the withholding of exculpatory evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, among other issues that I was compelled to write an opinion piece for the New York Post. It is true that last week, the New York Post editors reached out to 3 parties, one being George Gascon, Megan Pete's team, and Kelsey Harris. It is also true that Megan's team was the only ones that responded back for that request for comment. had some glaring questions, and that was the reason for this op-ed. Things didn't make any sense to me, many issues in this case, and I was shocked by the lack of interest from the media to ask very simple questions. There were multiple people with gunshot residue on their hands that night. Why didn't all individuals have the residue tested, their DNA tested on the weapon? That's a legitimate question.
What's funny is that members of the press that he was a part of wasn't asking these questions. But us over here on YouTube, we was definitely asking these questions.
Yes.
According to the prosecution, Tory was excluded from the clip of the gun. And according to Tory's defense team, they said DNA analysis showed that there was a 0.01% chance that Tory touched the actual gun itself.
9 tablets of 100 milligram generic Viagra for $7.
Nobody want to hear that crap, man. Always.
Very simple questions. There were multiple people with gunshot residue on their hands that night. Why didn't all individuals have the residue tested, their DNA tested on the weapon? That's a legitimate question.
What's funny is that members of the press that he was a part of wasn't asking these questions. But us over here on YouTube, we was definitely asking these questions.
According to the prosecution, Tory was excluded from the clip of the gun. And according to Tory's defense team, they said DNA analysis showed that there was a 0.01% chance that Tory touched the actual gun itself. Another piece that stood out to me, the call that the prosecution alleged Tory made confessing to a crime. I listened to that call. I'm sure many of you have as well. I didn't hear a confession. But what really shocked me about it is if my best friend was shot maliciously by someone just 2 to 3 hours before, I wouldn't have answered the call, or if I did, I wouldn't calmly have a conversation with the individual of it. And certainly, I would ask, why did you shoot my friend? And more importantly, I would never have given you my current location out of fear of you finishing the job. That was something that stood out to me. I also, in my op-ed, discussed Kelsey Harris pleading the Fifth Amendment. She wasn't accused of anything by Megan Pete or the police, and to my knowledge, she wasn't under any investigation. So why plead the Fifth?
Yeah.
What also shocked me is the prosecution gave her immunity. For what?
For what?
What did she do? Is there an allegation of her doing something? I'm not aware of that. Maybe some of you can answer that question today. During the time of trial, George Gascon, just to take you back to where we were at that particular point, he had just barely won a recall attempt. He lost support in many key demographics of voters. Crime was up in Los Angeles County. And this case would have been a silver bullet for him potentially winning. His policies obviously were bad and people were harmed. So that didn't happen, and thank God it didn't happen. At the heart of this injustice is the misuse of gun enhancement charges, a sensitive tool intended for the most dangerous and violent offenders. In Tory Lane's case, these enhancements were not supported by evidence.
Free Tory.
George Gascon, interestingly enough, who is someone who regularly would drop enhancements or not recommend them, chose to provide enhancements to Tory. And in his case, in any given situation, according to legal analysts I've spoken with, he would do 1 to 3 years if he did it without the enhancement. That's interesting. Why did George Gascon choose to pursue these enhancements? You know, there's cases I've been looking through which George Gascon has pursued, many in which he utilized these enhancements. A couple come to mind that I would like to reference here. One, Raymond Danger Gonzalez, a Mexican mafia gang member involved in a premeditated murder of 2 young men in 2017. Despite the brutality of the crime, Gascon didn't recommend enhancements. You premeditated murdered a teenager and another individual. Brutal crime. Why would you recommend enhancements, but you would recommend them for Tory. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, Tory is way more high profile, and he can push his agendas forward more freely if he's able to get a high profile person locked behind bars underneath those enhancements.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to take a long break. I will be back with part 2 of this story. New evidence confirms that Tory Lanez is innocent. Tyrone Bowman live. Never surrender. Never quit.